Christina Aguilera was hitting the high note when Whitney Houston stood up in the audience. But what the voice did next, walking onto the stage during Christina's performance, shocked every person in that arena. Nobody knew this would become the most emotional moment in music history. Before we continue, if you love untold stories of music legends, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about your favorite Whitney Houston moment. Now, back to what happened that night, May 2001. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Christina, this is Marcus from BET Awards. We'd like you to honor Whitney Houston with a tribute performance of Run to You. Christina's hand started shaking. Honor Whitney Houston? The Whitney Houston? The woman whose poster had hung above her childhood bed? The voice she'd tried to imitate in her bathroom mirror for years, never quite reaching those impossible notes? I don't know what to say, Christina managed, her voice barely steady. After the call ended, Christina sat in silence for 20 minutes, staring at her phone. She was 20 years old. Whitney was a living legend, the standard against which every female vocalist was measured. How do you sing the Voices song without being destroyed by comparison? Her mother found her that evening, pacing her apartment, playing the original 1985 recording on repeat. "Mommy, I can't do this," Christina said, tears forming. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I embarrass myself in front of her?" Her mother took Christina's face in her hands. "This isn't about being Whitney. This is about honoring what she gave to music, to you, to all of us." Christina made the decision that night. She would accept. She would prepare like her life depended on it. And she would pray Whitney Houston wouldn't hate her for trying. But what Christina didn't know was that Whitney was fighting her own battle. And this performance would mean more to the voice than anyone could imagine. While Christina prepared, Whitney Houston sat in her New Jersey home, staring at her reflection. It was 2001, and the voice was showing cracks. Her marriage to Bobby Brown was turbulent. The media was relentless. And privately, her voice, the instrument that had made her legendary, was beginning to betray her. When Bet first asked Whitney to perform at her own tribute, she declined. "I'm not ready," she told her manager. But when they mentioned Christina Aguilera would perform Run to You, something shifted. A young white girl singing her signature song at an awards show celebrating Black excellence? The old Whitney would have been flattered. The 2001 Whitney felt threatened. "I don't have to go," she told Bobby. "I can skip it." Bobby understood his wife. "You need to see this, Nip. You need to see what you mean to people." Whitney wasn't sure she wanted to know. 3 weeks before the performance, Christina was in her vocal coach's studio, running through Run to You for the 100th time. "Stop," her coach interrupted. "You're singing Whitney's interpretation. Where's yours?" "But this is a tribute. I'm supposed to sound like her." "No, tribute doesn't mean imitation. It means honoring the spirit while bringing yourself to the song." Christina tried again, letting her own vocal runs emerge. It felt wrong, like betrayal, but it also felt real. As Christina prepared to walk on stage, Whitney made a decision that would shock everyone, including Christina herself. June 19th, 2001. The Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles was packed. Word had spread about Christina's tribute to Whitney. Christina arrived 3 hours early, her stomach in knots. She vocalized quietly, testing her range. In the VIP section, Whitney arrived with Bobby Brown and her security team. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Whitney smiled for the cameras, but her eyes told a completely different story. She was terrified. A production assistant knocked on Christina's door. "You're on in 15 minutes. Christina looked at herself in the mirror. Simple black dress, hair pulled back. No sequins, no glamour. This was about honoring Whitney's voice, not competing with her image. She walked toward the stage entrance and caught a glimpse through the curtain. There, third row center, sat Whitney Houston. Christina's knees went weak. The house lights dimmed. The announcer's voice filled the theater. "To honor the legendary Whitney Houston, please welcome Christina Aguilera performing Run to You." Christina stepped into the spotlight. For one terrible moment, she saw Whitney's face, unreadable, intense, and almost forgot the first line. Then the music started. The opening notes of Run to You filled the theater, and Christina opened her mouth. Her voice emerged, strong, clear, unmistakably hers. In the third row, Whitney leaned forward. Her expression was critical. This was her song. How would this young girl handle it? Christina moved through the first verse with growing confidence. She'd made a choice. She wouldn't replicate Whitney's 1985 performance. She would bring herself to the song. Where Whitney had used power, Christina used restraint. Where Whitney had soared, Christina simmered. Same song, something new. Whitney's face began to soften. The chorus arrived and Christina let herself open vocally. Her runs were different, more gospel-influenced, more raw. She wasn't imitating, she was interpreting. People began to sway. This wasn't what they'd expected. Whitney Houston felt something crack inside her chest. She'd been so afraid of being replaced, of watching someone else own her song. But this girl wasn't trying to replace her. She was honoring her. Christina reached the bridge, the most vulnerable part. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, building slowly. Whitney's eyes filled with tears. As Christina climbed toward the final chorus, Whitney Houston did something no one expected. She stood up, but she didn't stop there. The audience thought Whitney was giving an early standing ovation. Some people around her began to stand as well, not wanting to be rude. But Whitney kept moving. She stepped into the aisle. She started walking toward the stage. Christina saw the movement in her peripheral vision and almost lost her place in the song. Was that? No, it couldn't be. Whitney Houston was walking toward her. The BET producers in the control booth started panicking. What is she doing? Should we cut away? Stay on Christina? Get both in the frame. Security guards near the stage looked at each other, unsure whether to stop the voice from approaching the performance area. But Whitney's intention was clear, purposeful. No one dared interrupt her. Christina kept singing, her voice wavering now, not from technical weakness, but from pure emotional overwhelm. The woman she'd idolized her entire life was climbing the stairs to the stage. During her performance of Whitney's own song, the cameras scrambled to capture both women in the frame. The audience began to realize something unprecedented was happening. Christina hit the final high note, giving it everything she had, tears streaming down her face now. She held it longer than she'd ever practiced, longer than she thought possible, because the voice was standing 5 feet away from her, watching, witnessing, validating. When the note finally ended, when the music faded, there was a moment of absolute silence in the theater, a held breath, the world pausing. Whitney Houston stepped forward and took Christina Aguilera's hand. Her grip was firm, warm, reassuring. Then she raised it high above both their heads. This, Whitney's voice boomed through the microphone she'd taken from a nearby stand, is how you honor a song. This is how you honor music. This is how it's done. The arena erupted. Not just applause. It was a thunderous, emotional outpouring. People were crying, screaming, witnessing something they knew they'd remember for the rest of their lives. Christina's knees buckled. Whitney caught her, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home. The younger woman was sobbing now, her body shaking with the magnitude of what was happening. Whitney was presenting her to the world, the student held up by the teacher, the future lifted by the past, the torch being passed in real time, captured by cameras, witnessed by thousands, preserved forever in history. Photographers' flashes exploded like lightning. The standing ovation was deafening, but all Christina could hear was Whitney's voice in her ear, speaking words the microphones couldn't catch, words meant only for her. You saved this song for me tonight, baby. You gave it new life. Christina could barely breathe. I was so scared of disappointing you. Whitney pulled back, looking into Christina's eyes with an intensity that went beyond the moment, beyond the performance, into something deeper and more eternal. You honored me by being yourself. That's all I could have asked for. That's everything. They stood there, hands still clasped and raised to the audience, as the ovation continued. 2 minutes that felt like hours. 2 women, 2 generations. One moment of perfect grace. Finally, Whitney led Christina to the front of the stage, presented her one more time to the roaring crowd, then kissed her on the forehead and walked back to her seat. Christina stood alone in the spotlight, mascara running, barely able to stand, but transformed. She knew something fundamental had shifted. not just in her career, but in her understanding of what it meant to carry music forward. But the most important part of that night was yet to come, what Whitney said backstage, away from the cameras. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on Christina's dressing room door. Whitney Houston stood there, holding 2 bottles of water, looking suddenly very human. "Can I come in?" Whitney asked softly. Christina nodded, speechless. Whitney sat on the small couch and gestured for Christina to join her. For a moment, neither spoke. "I almost didn't come tonight," Whitney finally said. "My voice isn't what it used to be. Every day I wake up afraid. Afraid it's getting worse. Afraid I'll lose the thing that made me who I am." Christina reached for Whitney's hand. "When they told me you were singing Run to You, I felt sick," Whitney admitted. "I thought I was being replaced, someone younger, someone whose voice hasn't been damaged." "Your voice isn't destroyed," Christina whispered. Whitney smiled sadly. "I know what I hear, what I can't do anymore." She paused. "I was going to stay home, but then I realized that's the problem. My song. Like I own it. Like music belongs to any of us." Whitney looked at Christina with tears forming. "You taught me something tonight. You reminded me that songs don't die when the original singer fades. They live through voices like yours. Voices that honor the spirit but add their own truth. You didn't try to be me. You made my song something new. Something that will outlive both of us." Christina was crying. "I've listened to your voice my whole life. You're the reason I wanted to sing. And now you're the reason I remember why I fell in love with singing," Whitney said. "Not for fame, not for awards, for moments when music connects souls across generations." Whitney stood, and Christina stood with her. "Promise me something," Whitney said seriously. "Don't let them break your voice the way they broke mine. Protect your instrument. Protect your truth. And when your time comes to step back and watch the next generation, and it will come, be gracious. Let go with love." Whitney pulled Christina into one more embrace. "Thank you for tonight. You gave me permission to let go. You showed me my legacy is safe." When Whitney left, Christina sat alone for an hour, trying to hold on to every word. She had no way of knowing that 11 years later, those words would take on a meaning she couldn't yet comprehend. In the years following 2001, Christina and Whitney stayed in touch. Whitney would call occasionally. "Just checking on you, baby. How's your voice?" Christina learned to recognize the deeper question. Are you protecting what I couldn't protect? When Christina's voice showed strain in 2006, Whitney sent a note. "Rest is not weakness. Rest is wisdom. Learn from my mistakes." They saw each other at industry events. Always a warm embrace. Always that knowing look. The shared understanding of what it means to be a woman with a voice the world both celebrates and tries to destroy. But Christina noticed something changing. Whitney's eyes carried more pain. The voice was struggling with demons beyond music. On February 11, 2012, Christina's phone rang. Whitney Houston had been found dead at the Beverly Hilton. Christina sat down on the floor and wept for 3 hours. 2 days later, the music world was in shock. Whitney Houston, the voice, the legend, the woman who had defined vocal excellence for a generation, was gone at 48. The American Music Awards, scheduled for that month, became a memorial. The producers called Christina. "Would you sing a tribute to Whitney?" Christina said yes before they finished asking. On the night of the AMAs, Christina walked onto the stage wearing all white. No elaborate production, no backup dancers, just her, a microphone, and a piano player. She chose "I Will Always Love You," the song that had become Whitney's signature, her crowning achievement, the vocal performance against which all others were measured. Christina closed her eyes and began to sing. Her voice was raw with grief. She didn't try to match Whitney's legendary runs. She didn't try to replicate the power. Instead, she sang it as a conversation, as if Whitney were listening from somewhere beyond. As she built toward the final chorus, Christina did something unplanned. She raised her hand high above her head, just like Whitney had raised hers in 2001. The symbolism was unmistakable. The student honoring the teacher, the future saluting the past. The continuation of a legacy that Whitney had worried about, had feared for, but had ultimately secured through moments of grace, like that night at the BET Awards. When Christina finished, when the final note faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the arena. Backstage, she collapsed into her mother's arms. She wanted to know her music would live on, Christina said through tears. She needed to know she mattered beyond her own voice. I hope she knows now. I hope she sees. Years have passed. Christina is now the elder stateswoman of pop vocals. New singers cite her as an influence, just as she cited Whitney. What did it feel like when Whitney walked onto the stage? Reporters ask. Christina's answer has deepened with time. In that moment, I thought it was about me. But Whitney was teaching everyone what legacy really means. It's not about protecting your throne, it's about building stairs for the next generation. She pauses. Whitney walked onto that stage to literally lift me up, to tell the world, this is how it's done. You honor the past by celebrating the future. Christina has made it a point to do the same. When young singers on The Voice perform her songs, she doesn't critique them for not matching her original. She encourages them to find their own truth. I learned that from Whitney. Songs are living things. They grow and change. That's not a betrayal. It's the highest form of honor. In Christina's studio hangs a photograph from 2001. Whitney and Christina on stage, hands raised together, both faces showing pure joy. Beneath it, Christina's handwriting. She didn't raise my hand to celebrate me. She raised my hand to free herself. And in freeing herself, she freed all of us. The footage has been viewed millions of times. It's become iconic, a symbol of grace, mentorship, and how great artists understand their immortality comes through those they inspire. Christina reflects now. She was letting go in the most public, gracious way possible, releasing her grip on something she'd held so tightly, her voice, her songs, her identity. She was saying, I trust you. I trust the music. And it has lived on. Every time a singer performs Whitney's catalog, they participate in the legacy Whitney secured that night. Every time an artist steps back to celebrate a newcomer, they repeat Whitney's lesson. Every time someone chooses grace over competition, they honor what The Voice taught on June 19, 2001. Whitney Houston walked onto a stage and raised Christina Aguilera's hand. In doing so, she raised all of us. Everyone who has feared being replaced, everyone who has struggled to let go, everyone who has wondered if their contribution will matter. The answer was in that simple, powerful gesture. The music lives on, the voice echoes, and the hand that lifts another will never fall.